Welcome to the On Your Side podcast. I'm Susan Campbell, joined by Scott Passmore, our amazing guest host and longtime anchor of Good Morning Arizona. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you. I love doing these with you. And today's title or subject, very near and dear to all of us, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I have to ask you, how many times does your phone ring or how many times do you get a text message that it is totally spam, totally annoying, unwanted?
Daily.
Does it happen all the time?
Oh, absolutely. Daily. And I have this one. We'll talk about it. It's this recurring call from different numbers about the same subject. It is driving me up. It's crazy. I can't stop it.
We've got to have a solution.
Okay.
That is why we are bringing in Alex Quilici. He is the CEO of YouMail. You track robocalls. You block robocalls. Alex, give us an idea of how bad this robocall problem actually is.
Well, the best way to describe the robocall problem is most people are getting a robocall every day or every other day. So there's been 52 billion, which is like 200 per person over the course of the year, which is insane.
It is insane. And give me an idea of where these are coming from. Are these legitimate companies? Are these all scammers? What are we talking about?
Well, it's a mix. About half of them are actually legitimate robocalls. They're the doctor's appointment reminder, the pharmacy reminder to call them back, those kinds of things. The other half are a mix of scammers, usually from overseas, but quite a few here, and just sketchy telemarketers. And a lot of the sketchy telemarketers are in the U.S.
I feel like it's making people not answer their phone, which is a bad thing for me as a reporter. I call people every single day, and I always want them to pick up because I need to get a hold of them for some reason. And people are always sending me right to voicemail, and I leave the voicemail. I'm like, please call me back. I'm real. I'm not a robocall. But I feel like a lot of people just have stopped answering the phone altogether.
You get that way. It's like, can I tell you about this call I get? Okay, so I kept it here. This person says, hey, it's Melanie with the underwriting department reaching out about your personal loan inquiry, which is almost approved for $64,000, yada, yada, yada. Our underwriting guidelines have expanded. This just went to my voicemail. Anyway, call this number directly until 5 p.m. today. So I get that particular call like every day. I didn't apply for a loan. And then when you answer it, I know it's coming. They're different phone numbers all the time. And so it's a recording. And so I hung on. And when the person got on the line, I said, I am not asking for a loan. Do not call me anymore. And they just hung up. Yeah. And the next day, it starts all over again.
From a different number.
So
even if you block that other number.
Yeah, I mean, I'd spend my entire day blocking numbers.
Alex, I'm sure this sounds like a familiar issue. What does Scott do in this situation with this phone call?
Well, there's a couple of things. So one is, this is what we mean by sketchy telemarketing. Like in theory, it's okay for them to call you if you gave them consent, if you really applied for a loan. And so it's very hard for the government and enforcers to try to shut this off. They have to be able to prove they're calling people without consent, which is like a whole legal process. So that brings up the question, what do you do? So you can do everything from send all unknown callers to voicemail. That's now a feature on your Android or your iPhone. But then that is a problem if you want to answer the phone for people. If you want to do more, you need to get a robocall blocking app. So YouMail has one. There are others. Our app tries to know which numbers are bad and block those. And we do that for free. And then our paid service actually forces all the automated callers to go through a CAPTCHA, an audio capture where they have to press 1, 2, or some number that we say to press. That is an amazing filter that stops them from getting through. So you need some sort of automated tool to try to filter through all this automated stuff that none of us want.
Aren't the phone carriers supposed to have all of this call blocking technology already?
So they have some, and they do block certain calls that have obvious problems, like they weren't signed correctly. That's a technical thing that has to happen. But the carriers are in the business of getting calls through, right? And so for a carrier to block a call is a big deal. They have to be able to prove that this is some sort of illegal activity. So if, say, Amazon calls up a carrier and says, hey, someone's pretending to be us, they're calling from these numbers, sure, the carrier will go and block it. But if it's a telemarketing call, the carrier doesn't want to be in the business of, is this a good telemarketing call or a bad telemarketing call? And so they provide some tools, but they're just not great at blocking this stuff.
So when it pops up on your phone and it says likely spam or spam call, those are the ones that, how did those get labeled as bad?
So that's a really great question because it's almost random. So I've had my doctor be labeled as spam likely simply because they make automated calls that remind you about your appointment. And I've had the bad guys get through. And so there's just technology that tries to decide if it's spam or not. First time they've seen a number and it's calling high volume, oh, must be bad. Not that it's, a new dentist calling all the patients to tell them they've moved. And so you wind up with these problems where it's really hard to know what's going on with these calls.
So Alex, for a while, I was like, okay, I'm going to block that number. And every single day I'm blocking numbers and they kept coming. How are they able to change the numbers where they come from so much?
Well, there's two ways. One is they just make them up. So there's a thing called spoofing where when you make a call through a wholesale carrier, you just say, this is the number I'm calling from. So pick a number, right? And so you can pick a different number for every call. That's going down. So what they do instead is they go to a carrier and say, I need 100,000 numbers. I want to have local numbers in every area of the country. And they just start randomly calling from them. But you bring up a good point, which is the only way to stop this stuff really in the long run is stop it at the source, right? You've got to prevent these guys from getting started with 100,000 numbers and calling everybody. And so that's where we've started to work on. We take the data that we get from all the consumers using our app, figure out where the bad guys are, figure out what carriers they're using to get on the network, and work with those carriers as customers of ours to help show them, hey, this is bad traffic, you need to stop it. And then they'll kick their customer off who's making the call.
They're really smart because some of the numbers come from 877, some are 888, but then they also use local numbers and you're like, well, this is a legit call, but it's not.
It's a great trick. I mean, if you think about these callers, they're marketers. Their job is to get you to answer the phone and press 1 or respond to them. So they'll try every trick in the book. Toll-free numbers. Oh, that must be important. Local number. That must be important. Fake your bank's phone number. Oh, it's going to say bank of whatever on your phone. That's important. So these guys are doing everything they can to get through.
I had one time, my phone started getting flooded with phone calls and people being like, stop calling me. My number was spoofed. So some robocaller somewhere in the world spoofed the number that I've had since I was 16 years old with my first cell phone and started just barraging people with total garbage. But then they would call me, my real number, and get me on the phone. And I was like, I didn't call you. I have no idea. And they were like, you were trying to sell, da, da, da. And I was like, I didn't. I don't know what this is. I'm really sorry. So now I'm apologizing for these robocallers.
Yeah, and you didn't do a thing.
That I did nothing wrong. It is so frustrating. It feels like I'm lucky. I'm going to knock on wood a whole bunch right now. I don't get very many. I don't know how I got so lucky. But my number so far has kind of gone under the radar. How do some people get lucky and kind of avoid it without using all kinds of call blocking technology?
It's a lot of randomness on who these guys decide to call. There's several things they do. Sometimes they're just calling different numbers to see which ones respond. And once there's a response, they'll call it more. Sometimes they're using data brokers. So there's hundreds of data brokers out there that aggregate phone numbers and names and email addresses and all sorts of other things. And they can just go to those brokers and get the list of numbers. So for example, if you're doing some sort of Medicare scam, let me find the people over age 65 who have a certain amount of money and who one time inquired about healthcare. You can go get that list and then just start calling away. So right now, I think you're lucky you're not on a list, or you're lucky that your phone number is not in a range that they're slamming.
So, Alex, where is this problem headed? Is it only going to get worse?
No, I actually am an optimist, and I think it's going to get better because we've learned a couple of things. So we've learned that as consumers get these blocking tools, they do get fewer calls and they respond less, and that's a good cycle. So that's one thing. On the other end, we're seeing enforcement works. When the FCC or the attorney generals go after one of the big robocallers and they go through the process and they shut them down, we see big drops in robocalls. Now, we see it for a while. You might see it for 1 or 2 months and then boom, it starts popping up. But I think we're seeing enforcement start to scale up. And as enforcement scales up and you take out callers who make 400 million calls or 200 million calls, that starts making a big difference. So I'm under the belief that we're seeing both things. Consumers are screening more calls with automated tools, and enforcers are getting much more aggressive at who they're going after, both carriers that are bad and these callers, both in the US and other places.
I thought a few years ago there was a law, maybe I'm wrong, where if you told the person don't call me anymore, they weren't allowed to.
So there is that law, but just like a no trespassing sign, the bad guys aren't going to pay any attention to it.
Okay.
And in fact, there's evidence that some folks actually use the do not call list as their target audience, because people who put their number on the do not call list were more likely to answer the phone thinking it was a real call.
Wow.
That's unreal.
Really frustrating. So should we have our number still on the do not call list or not?
It is worth having on the do not call list because that they're actually committing a sort of a crime or violating a regulation to call you. So the government can take advantage of that when they go after them. And the good thing is the good guys do behave with the do not call list. So you're not going to get calls from your real credit card company, at dinner time. They'll pay attention to that.
Okay, one little piece of silver lining. I wanted to kind of go over some of these really eye-popping stats that you had, Alex. In December averaged 140.6 million robocalls per day, 1,627 robocalls per second. That's a giant number.
It's astonishing.
I'm actually kind of amazed that we're sitting here doing this podcast and neither of our phones have gone off.
I've
Has
got mine.
yours?
It's on silent.
It is just an eye-popping number. I do love your perspective that hopefully with enforcement it goes down. Are there ways that these robocallers, even the legitimate ones, are getting around enforcement though?
I think so. I mean, one of the ways you guys are seeing is they're using lots of different numbers. And what they'll do is they'll go to a whole bunch of different carriers and get numbers from those carriers and start making calls from them. So even if you stop them from using one carrier, they go and use another one. So there's lots of ways to try to get around this. The best thing about enforcement, though, is enforcement can get evidence that says this is what they're doing, this is how they did it, and then go after it. We've seen cases now that it's actually criminal referrals if they're scamming people through the robocalls. There's the FCC's fined folks $250 million. I mean, they haven't collected yet, but those massive fines are out there, and those can start discouraging people.
We saw over the holiday season, there was a rash of calls that appeared to be from Walmart customer service. Obviously, the scammers knew people were ordering things from Walmart for the holidays. So FCC kind of shut that down right away and said, we've got to stop this. But I have talked to so many people over the years of being a consumer reporter who are scammed out of tons of money, tens of thousands of dollars, life savings, because the call popped up and it appeared to be from their bank. And this scam is repeated over and over and over again, where a phone call looks like it's coming from the financial institution that you do banking with because they've spoofed that number. And they're telling you there's a problem with your bank account. They're trying to help you protect your money because they don't want you to lose your money. And all of a sudden, it's off to the races. You've unlocked your computer. You've unlocked everything. You've given these bad guys access to all of your banking information. It's wiped out in a second. And it's because that number, it all started with a number that looked legitimate. And if people are not being heads up with their heads on a swivel, ready for this, it's easy to trust what pops up on the screen.
Well, the bottom line, and Alex, I'm sure you'll agree with this, the people that do this are really good at what they do.
They are absolutely great at what they do. And you guys are touching on the real problem with robocalls. They're a nuisance, right? But these are nefarious ones. These are ones that are causing people to lose their life savings. And that's the real problem. It's just how dangerous the telephone network has become for people. You get the bank being spoofed, but they can just make a random number, say the bank as the caller name, right? It looks like it's the bank calling you. So our advice for people, protect yourself with apps, but whenever you get a call, take a deep breath and go, does this make any sense at all? Like, is this my bank? I'm going to hang up and call the bank. There's absolutely no reason the bank's going to be asking you to move money around. Just take that breath for a second, hang up and call whoever's calling you, but through a place where you can be sure it's their number from your debit card or going to their website. If people did that, almost all of these scams would vanish. It's that just take a second and not tap, 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 or click call back or react right away. You just have to pause.
Alex, that is worth saying again, so I'm going to repeat it too. Take your bank card out of your wallet. Look at the phone number that is on the back of that card. That is the number you dial when you want to call your banking institution or your credit card company or whatever you're calling. that number that's printed on the back of the card is going to get you to the right place at least.
That's absolutely right. And it's just taking that time. And I know people panic because it says, oh, this is a bank. There's fraud on your account. We have to do this. That's not how it works. Hang up and then call that number on the card. And then the banks love when you call them and tell them, hey, someone tried to scam you, because that's good. They want to know what's going on. If they're not, don't be embarrassed that you called your bank about this.
And of course, all ages can be scammed. My mom is 94, doing great. She's very particular and specific about how she handles her money. She doesn't have a lot of it. So nothing is ever late. Everything's on time. She likes to do everything right. So when she gets calls and she'll tell me about it, I always say, now, wait a second, Mom, just take a deep breath and let's call the number on the back of your card and make sure that's who's calling you.
And talk through it. And I love that she has that open line of communication with you to have that extra set of eyes and ears on things. I think a lot of people are a little bit more isolated, and that's where some of these things
or they might be embarrassed.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, you mentioned you have a free version of your call blocking technology. Give us, I love free. You say the word free, I am all in. Give us a quick overview of how that actually works, what we need to do if we want to use that.
So the app is called YouMail. You simply download it on your iPhone or your Android phone. It takes you through a setup process, and it basically maintains a block list that we have. So millions of numbers are on that list. It's going to block all those calls. If someone leaves a voicemail, it's going to tell you if this voicemail was a scam or not. So, hey, no, this is an impersonator. Don't call them back. And there's some other things it does, and that's all for free. The thing it doesn't do is if people pick random numbers and call you, the free app can't block it. So the paid app is one that actually forces all unknown callers to go through a CAPTCHA and press a button to get through. And that stops an amazing amount of stuff.
How many calls do you stop?
So we've gotten over the years over 10 billion calls and probably stopped 1 billion of them at least.
Whoa. How long has this actually been a problem? When did you guys start?
So we started as a voicemail company, and then we pivoted when we saw people back in 2015 or so were using our service to play a greeting that was this number's out of service to numbers they didn't want calling them. That's when we realized, oh, there's a problem here, because this is how people aren't using it as a voicemail service. They're using it to protect themselves.
It would be cool if phone makers like Apple and all the phones out there actually the phone came with your service already on there.
They're trying to do their own services. I think we're in a unique position because of how much data we have. We've been able to train AI to recognize bad stuff much better than anyone else. But the phone companies are trying. I give them credit for trying. AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, they're trying to block calls. Apple has a call screening service. It turns out it's super annoying because every caller gets transcribed and you have to go look at the transcription, which is just it's just irritating, right? You're doing work. I got to look at this. It's a scammer versus just blocking it. But everybody's trying to address the problem. I think the key is going to be stopping it at the source, not by the time it gets to your phone.
How does AI impact what you do and how many extra things you are blocking? I mean, back in 2015, when you're noticing that this is kind of how people are using your service, AI was not nearly the player it is right now.
I think AI has helped us get better. It helps us understand and be able to describe what actually happened with a voicemail, for example. Before, we used to be able to just say good or bad. Now all these large language models say, oh, no, it's impersonating this brand. It's trying to do this thing. It's super helpful for us. And we're able to train it with all of our historical data, which is why it can be so good going forward. So AI has been a boon for us. It's helped us do what we're doing better.
Fantastic. Alex, if people want to find you or more about your company or your free app, give us all the good places we can go.
So www.youmail.com, you can learn all about it, or just search for YouMail in the app stores and we'll pop right up.
I see. There's 2 to choose from, so it looks very easy to do.
He's ready. He's gonna
get rid of this thing, callers, one way or the other.
We're gonna check back in with you in a week, Alex, and tell you if these calls have stopped for Scott.
So, hey, one thing, you mentioned your 94-year-old mom. I wonder how much she uses a cell phone versus an old school landline. So we'll give you a free trick to use for old school landlines. My mom, every call goes through an answering machine that's been pulled out of the closet and she's using, and that's been what gives her time to take a breath. She hears it on there. She waits. They leave a number. Oh, it's Bank of America calling. Okay, wait, I'm going to call Bank of America.
So we can't forget about 50 million landlines that are out there.
True, very true.
And so we don't have a great solution for the landlines, but the answering machine is a pretty good start.
The answering machine. We're going back in the day.
Yeah, that's going to be way back in a back closet somewhere.
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for your time. This was a really fun conversation. Have a great rest of the new year.
You too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Fantastic conversation. I've spoken with Alex before, and this whole podcast kind of came up because you were telling me about these really annoying robocalls that would not stop. And I was like, you know what? It might be time to revisit this subject.
Well, totally. And everybody's got a phone in this entire world, and it affects everyone.
It really does. You really did pull up that app. You're going to give it a whirl.
I'm double clicking as we speak.
Right now, guys, he's going to block things. If he doesn't answer, that's his excuse, right?
Exactly.
The On Your Side podcast is produced by Brad Denny. Our audio engineer and editor is Todd Martin. Segment producer is Colin Stanton. And I'm Susan Campbell. If you have a problem you can't resolve, maybe we can. Send us a message through azfamily.com or our AZ Family mobile news app. Look for the On Your Side section and leave us a message. Thanks so much for listening to the On Your Side podcast. And if you like it, leave us a review. We'll see you next week.
On Your Side is on Good Morning Arizona every weekday morning at 6:45 and 7 o'clock, and every weekday evening on Good Evening Arizona at 4 and 5 o'clock. You can also catch it on Arizona's Family News at 9 on 3TV every weeknight.